It takes a lot of nerve for Nokia to call its latest device the Lumia icon, especially when you consider that the last Verizon phone it did was anything but iconic. But I must admit, Nokia really stepped its game up when it comes to the icon. All of the complaints that I had about the 928 are pretty much gone, and in its place is a device that I could definitely recommend to a lot of people. For starters, you have this great 5-inch display. It's an OLED panel and it's full HD, so it looks very crisp and it looks very clear. It doesn't matter if you're indoors or outdoors. Most of the time, you'll be very pleased with its settings. I was especially impressed outdoors because it has Nokia's sunlight visibility, which is designed to help you when viewing the screen outdoors. The one problem that I had is the brightness setting. You don't really have much control over it. You can either put it on automatic, high, medium, or low. You can't really fine tune it to the exact setting that you'd like, but more than likely when you put it on auto, it'll recognize the ambient light around you and apply the right setting. So it'll be very bright when you're in a dark room and very visible when you're outdoors. It'll realize that. Aside from that, you can have the option to change the color profile. This is something that I particularly liked because if the display isn't quite to your preference when it comes to colors, you could just go to settings, display, and adjust. And from there, you can make the image more vivid, more warm, so you can change the saturation and temperature, and you can browse to different photos that they have to help you realize. So if you look at a lot of photos of your friends online, you might decide to make your images crank up the vividness and crank up the warmth, depending on the way it looks when you take a look at it. But like I said, indoors, outdoors, the screen is more than likely going to be very appealing. The same is true when it comes to the body of the Lumia icon. When you just look at this, it doesn't look that amazing, especially in the black version. This has like that stealth black look that you see on some devices. There's a white version as well that looks like a little bit more flashy, but in terms of feel and design, it's boring, but in a good way. I really like the metal sides. In addition to the buttons, the frame of the side is metal. Well, actually, let me clarify. The buttons themselves are not metal. They're plastic, but they're flat and very responsive. But the frame, the outer rim, is metal. And the back is plastic as well. But it's not a glossy plastic like we saw with the 928, which can really get smudgy and fingerprint and ugly and oily. That's not an issue here. It's just a regular plastic body, no special coating, just feels very nondescript and nice when you put your fingers across it, and you really don't notice it, and that's kind of a good thing. It gets out of your way. On the back, you have a speaker, and it's pretty loud. I listen to music when I'm in the shower, and if I don't want to bring in a Bluetooth speaker that's not fully charged, a lot of times I like to use my phone, but with the water running, it's not that great. Even with the water running, I was still able to hear Pandora playing on the Lumia icon, and I was very pleased when it came to the audio that you get from this rare speaker. And while we're on the topic of audio, I should also mention that when you're recording video, you have 4 microphones. So you have 2 at the top and you have 2 at the bottom, and they're directional mics. So they work very well when you're recording video. Now, I didn't notice a giant difference when I was recording, but I did notice that it was better than average in terms of recording voices and recording sounds when you're on a busy city street. It's very focused audio. I was very pleased with it. Less pleased with the camera quality when it came to video recording. I wasn't particularly impressed, especially when coming off using the Lumia 1020, which has the best video that I've seen. Obviously, Nokia couldn't go all out with the icon because it has only a 20 megapixel camera instead of that giant 41 megapixel camera house that we saw on the 1020. But at the same time, I wasn't pleased with the overall quality of the video. I found that it didn't focus fast enough. It was cloudy at times, and it especially didn't do very good when it was recording near a light source. So if you were under a lamp or near a street light, it didn't look very good. Photos, on the other hand, that's a different story. They have great color and they have great visibility as well. The software is really special because when you have the Nokia icon, you can play around with the settings in the camera app. You get full control over everything. You can change the white balance, the ISO, the focus, all of that changes very easily. You tap on an image and you take a picture. And if you want, you can also take a picture with a dedicated camera key at the top. But I prefer using the on-screen button because it's more likely that you'll hold things steady and keep everything in focus. The camera app can be a little challenging at first, but it has full controls over a lot of the things that you want to do. You have a timer for when you're taking group photos that you want to be in. You can also easily switch between the front and rear facing, and you can go through different lenses that allow you to take photos in a variety of ways. Of course, we all know that Nokia isn't shy about having lots of camera apps, including the Nokia Refocus app, which allows you to take multiple photos of different things. So if you have something in the foreground, something in the background, you can take photos and you can choose how it captures. It's pretty impressive. And there are several Nokia camera apps that you can go through. But more than likely, you're going to use Nokia Camera because that's the one that has the most controls. And thanks to this having a quad-core processor, 2.2 gigahertz, it's Qualcomm Snapdragon 800. This takes photos a lot faster than we saw on some other devices, particularly the 1020. So it'll process these high-quality images very quickly, which is something you'll definitely be pleased about. When you're in the camera app, you can take up-close photos, you can take landscapes. It does a lot better at macros and landscapes than it does in the mid-range images. Sometimes things can be a little out of focus, but more than likely you'll get a quality photo. And in the event that you want to zoom in a little bit closer, there's actually a one-finger zoom. You just drag your finger up and down to zoom in and out. And just like that, you're taking better photos. Other aspects of the software are a little more challenging. You don't have the same amount of choices when it comes to Android or iOS, but you do have some good features built directly into Windows Phone 8. For instance, on my lock screen, I've got this appointment that I need to keep up, and it gives me a quick reminder as soon as I get in. When I swipe up, of course, I have my live tiles. And because this qualifies as a larger screen, I'm able to get 3 rows of live tiles instead of the standard 2 that you get on some other devices. When you're browsing your apps, you just swipe to the right so you can see a full list of the apps that you have access to. And if you don't want to go through the entire list, of course, you just tap on a letter. And if I know I want to get to an app that starts with S, like SoundHound, I just tap S and it gives me a shortcut to get to it. Some of the app choices have gotten better on the Windows Phone overall, but you still get annoyed by the resuming and the loading signs. You see those little 3 dots more often than you would expect, especially now that they've upgraded to those quad-core processors. Windows Phone in general tends to be pretty fast in terms of fluidity when you're scrolling and when you're browsing things, but sometimes when you're loading a particular app, it takes a little bit longer than you would care for, and that's just something that you have to deal with. Still, the quality of some of the built-in apps are very good. Of course, there's Microsoft Office, which is fantastic. Best experience you're going to get from mobile documents. And there's USA Today has a pretty good app for reading the news. And then you have the official Instagram app and things like that. But I've softened on my problem with apps coming late to Windows Phone because, for instance, Instagram for Windows Phone is just not very good. You're better off using a third-party option like SixTag. Obviously, I would have preferred to have the official app be a lot better, but if you got to make the best of a bad situation, there are some quality app developers out there that are doing some good work on Windows Phone. Not as many as you'd like, but they're there nonetheless. It's a little more challenging when you're using Google services. For instance, if I want to check my Gmail, it's very easy for me to connect it and not have any issues related to using Gmail. But if I want to use Google Plus or Hangouts, 2 apps that I use daily to communicate with people, I can't use them. I don't have Google Music, but I have Pandora, Spotify, and plenty of alternatives. It's a little harder to get YouTube because Google and Microsoft don't play well together, and that's rather unfortunate. But like I said, you can kind of know the risks when you go into using a Windows Phone. You're not going to get as many app choices, but you'll get most of them. The real issue is going to be the feature choices. For instance, if something new comes out for Pandora, it's probably on Android and iOS before it comes to Windows Phone. And there's several weeks, if not months, of waiting for new features to make the jump over. In other areas, it's less of a bother. If you're just someone who's going to go on the internet, Internet Explorer does a reasonable job in terms of loading content, in terms of loading it quickly and efficiently. You won't have much problem in case you're just browsing the web. In case you just need a solid Twitter app, there's the Twitter app itself, and there's Mado as well. Lots of alternatives out there. But aside from that, if you really want to personalize it, you can make some changes by playing around with the live tiles on your home screen. These are kind of like widgets, except they provide live updates. So you see right here where it says 3 next to store, that means I have 3 apps that need to be updated. Aside from that, it's pretty much just standard Windows Phone devices. If you saw my Lumia 1520 review, you know what to expect. They're pretty much the same device in terms of hardware. The key difference is in the camera and the battery life. This has a 2000 milliamp battery, actually 2040 I believe. I'll put it on the screen just to double check. And the battery life is fantastic. Left the house early in the morning, came home late at night, no issues. Didn't have any problems, and things still ran very smoothly. The same is true when it comes to call quality, which was above and beyond what I came to experience on some recent Windows Phone, because this is on Verizon's network instead of AT&T, which is a lot stronger in my area. One thing that did surprise me is that the Verizon phone, the Lumia icon, did a better job of using Verizon's 3G network than my iPhone 5S. Now, when it came to 4G LTE, the iPhone was about better or on par most of the time. But when it came to areas of low coverage in Manhattan, like a building I was in the Lower East Side, I couldn't get on anywhere, any network with my Verizon iPhone 5S, but I was able to get on with the Lumia icon. So who should buy this phone? Well, unless you love Verizon and Windows Phone, this probably isn't even a device that you consider. But if you fall into that category, definitely, this is your only viable option. And I don't just mean that as the best of a bad situation. This is actually a phone that you can use. Traditionally, the best Windows Phone devices have always gone to AT&T. But with the Lumia icon, we finally have a device with a good camera, a great network, a great screen, and a more mature version of Windows 8 that you can actually use. It'll probably get a lot better with Windows Phone 8.1, and there are going to be some little things that will annoy you about this device, especially if you're someone who uses a lot of apps and relies on Google services. But if you can cope with having apps come later, or if you can cope with not needing to use those Google services, it's a lot more enjoyable to use the Lumia icon, and you shouldn't have much of an issue. Be sure to click the link in the description below so you can see my written thoughts about the Lumia icon and get more of my opinion of the device. After using it as my daily go-to phone for 2 weeks, I'm actually surprisingly pleased with the device. I've had to lower some expectations, but for the most part, it's been able to handle everything that I've thrown at it. This is Andrew with MobileBurn.com taking a look at the Nokia Lumia icon, available now on Verizon. Until next time, thanks for watching.